This is Steve Walker with Integrity and Joy. This is episode 2 of Integrity and Joy. Today, I'll be talking about how to live a good life. Like, how are we supposed to figure any of this stuff out? Work, relationships, finances, you name it. So most of us are probably hoping that we're going to get a decent amount of time on the planet, 70, 80, 90, 100 years, maybe more. And we're expected to figure out how to make good use of that time, how to live a good life, how to have hopefully a fair amount of moments of joy and love and laughter. We're supposed to figure out how to make money so that we can support ourselves and maybe some other people, and how to have good, healthy relationships, and how to manage our money, and like all of it. And we really don't do a great job, I think, of helping kids learn how to do all that. I actually think that most parents and schools just, aren't up to the task right now. I think we start asking kids at a relatively young age, what do you want to do when you grow up? And we haven't helped them learn what's actually out there. Like, what are the different jobs that are out there? And how do you figure out what you want to do with your life? We tell them, you should follow your passion. Well, what if you don't have a passion at 10 or 15 or 20 or 40, right? Find your purpose, right? That's easier said than done. And for some people, it just defaults to make a lot of money, right? Get a job that has some prestige to it. Get the right title. And yet most people, when they get to the point, if they do, where they're making the money that they wanted to make, or they have the job title or the promotion or whatever, they find it's shockingly unsatisfying and didn't make them feel as joyful or fulfilled as they thought it would. And we usually don't help kids learn how to have good relationships that well, right? We often are doing more showing them by example, and a lot of times the examples aren't great. And, parents are trying to model what a good relationship looks like, and raising kids is exhausting at times. And if one or both parents are working or have a business, and then you've got the kids and the kids' schedules, and it's exhausting and challenging, and we're often not on our best behavior in those moments in our lives. And so, and a lot of parents like me and my ex-wife are divorced. So my kids at a very young age grew up with, their parents not in the same household. And so they had to look elsewhere for examples of good, healthy relationships, marriages, etc. And so it's really, really challenging, right? When you become a teenager or in your 20s or 30s, and you're trying to figure out how to live a good life, and you feel like you're expected to have all the answers. And it's even challenging for people who are much older. There are lots of people in their 40s and 50s and 60s who are still trying to figure it out, either because they never quite did, or they did for a while and now things have changed. Kids have grown up, or they lost their job, or sold their business, whatever, and now they've got to reimagine what life is supposed to look like. And so a lot of us are kind of constantly searching for answers about how to live a good life and what are the secrets and all that. There's this great, the longest study ever of human happiness has been going on at Harvard for over 80 years. And their big takeaway was that it's not about your job. It's not about your professional life or your work. It's about relationships. That our relationships are what define the quality of our life. That if we have enough good, healthy, loving, caring relationships, not just romantic ones, but family, friends, at work, at the, place that you volunteer, your hobbies, whatever, in your community, that's what's going to make for a good life. That at the end of your days, you're going to look back on the quality of your relationships, not your professional accomplishments or anything else like that, how much money you made or accumulated or the house that you owned or whatever. So I think that's an important reminder that's the number one thing, is pay attention to your relationships and learn how to have healthy, loving, caring relationships that are filled with empathy and compassion and love and kindness, right? That's number one. And so, in the coming episodes, hopefully we'll talk a lot about healthy relationships and building good relationships, and because it's important, and we don't really teach kids emotional and social intelligence. Some schools are doing it now, and there's even blowback against it in some communities, right? There's some parents who are like, I don't want my kids being taught social and emotional intelligence in schools. But it's actually really important. The program that I led for a while, the Life School, we had an advisory program that was built around teaching kids social and emotional intelligence, and it was incredibly impactful. It was the soul of our school, and it probably had the biggest impact on kids of anything we did. And so, I've seen the benefit of doing that, but most schools don't do that or don't do it well. And again, I would argue in most households, kids aren't explicitly taught social and emotional intelligence, and it's, they'll pick up some things from watching other people, siblings, parents, grandparents, etc. But a lot of it we're on our own to figure this out. And you can look at, divorce rates and, other unhealthy relationships that people end up in, and it's, an example of how difficult it is for people to forge healthy relationships sometimes. And, mental health-wise, just in general, I mean, there's an epidemic of anxiety and depression in the country, particularly amongst young people, and that also shows that we really need to do a better job of helping kids learn how to take care of themselves, self-care, self-love, and how to manage their emotions and how to manage their mental health. Because your number one relationship is actually with yourself. And we don't do a great job of teaching kids how to do that, how to manage that relationship. So that's a big part of living a good life is relationships and starting with yourself, right? It's hard to have compassion with other people sometimes and patience with other people if you don't have it with yourself. Hard to be in a loving relationship with somebody if you don't love yourself. So that's a big thing. And then, inevitably we live in a society where you've got to support yourself or somebody has to support you, and you might need to support other people financially. And, this is a different beast than it was, say, 150 or 200 years ago where, most people were just trying to survive. And, you might have been a farmer or had a trade, and you were hoping to get by and make sure that you could feed your family and hopefully be safe. And now, like, there are all these different jobs and careers, and it's changing, right? It's changed over my lifetime where, it used to be when I was growing up that if you got a job in a factory, and it was a good union job, you could make a decent amount of money, own a house in the suburbs, and maybe even send your kids to college and take a vacation once every year or two or three. And now a lot of those jobs are gone largely because of automation, but also in some cases because of companies moving those jobs overseas, or foreign companies being more competitive and selling us a cheaper, more affordable product, and we like buying those. So a lot of those jobs went away, and we really didn't figure out as a society like what was going to replace them. And now we're in a place where AI is going to disrupt things even more. There are going to be jobs that 5 or 10 years ago or years from now won't exist, or there'll be fewer of them. There are other jobs that might not exist now but will in 10 years because of AI. We don't know how this is all going to play out. But it's clearly going to be a disruptive force in one way, shape, or form, for good or for ill, or both. And then, for most of my life, I think most Americans believe that the path to the American dream and the path to having a better life than your parents did, which was kind of part of that American dream, was to go to college. And in fact, in 2011, there was a study or a survey, and 94% of parents in the U.S. expected their kids to go to college. And 77% thought it was crucial for their kids to go to college. And again, I think that was true for a lot of my life. When I was growing up, my parents, neither of them had graduated from college. My dad went for like 2 weeks after World War II, and he couldn't sit still in the classroom, so he had to drop out. But when I was growing up, like, it was a given that there was no option other than go to college. That was my path, right? And we were poor, but it was that was my parents kept sending that message over and over again. You got to go to college. So it makes sense that 13 years ago, 94% of parents expected their kids to go to college. So they did a similar survey in 2021, just a couple of years ago. And only 54% of parents said that their hope was that their kid would go to college. 54%. Plummeted over the course of 10 years. There are lots of reasons why. But it's kind of part of a trend where I think more people are becoming a little disillusioned with the college education. It's so expensive. It saddles so many people with tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt that's crippling throughout their adulthood. There are lots of people who graduate from college and still struggle to get a job, certainly at times. And now there are an increasing number of employers who say they're not even requiring a bachelor's degree for a lot of jobs that they had in the past. The state of Massachusetts announced that in the last year or so. Something like 40-something% of the biggest 700 companies in the country have said that they've eliminated the requirement for a bachelor's degree from a lot of jobs. And that's because they're like, well, what does it tell you can do? Like, you have the degree, but what does it actually say you can do? And I think that's legit. And we'll talk in future episodes about problems in our education system, K through 12 and college and beyond. But as a result, college is not the path for most people at this point, right? Again, almost half of parents don't think they should be encouraging their kid to go to college. Only 40% of Americans go to a 4-year college. Another 25% or so go to community college or some kind of 2-year program, and another 5 to 10% about, I think, go to vocational or technical school. 60% aren't going to a 4-year college, and 30% or so aren't going to any kind of education after high school. So that can't be the answer for a lot of people. So there's a lot of uncertainty. What do you do? And how do you figure that out? And so we've got to do a better job of that, and because we do create our lives, right? We may feel sometimes like we are pawns in a big system or we're living in the matrix, but the reality is we're co-creating our lives, right? Co-creating with the other people that we come in contact with day to day and over time. Co-creating maybe with a higher force, whether you believe in God or the universe or whatever. Manifestation, right? We'll probably talk about that at some point. But you are co-creating. You are playing an important role in the creation of your life. And so living with intentionality is really important. Having healthy paradigms and mindsets is vital. Getting rid of your limiting beliefs and getting clarity about what you want to do with your life. Not just professionally, but in general, how you want to spend your time, with whom, etc. And to separate that from the expectations of other people. A lot of times we feel like we're living our lives. We pursue careers and marry people who our parents or other people expect us to, or we think they expect us to. And for sure, some of us are limited to some degree because of our circumstances. Certainly I was growing up poor to some extent, right? But at the time it was an era of abundant financial aid from the federal government and from a lot of colleges and universities. And so I got to go to a great school, Brandeis University, and, had to borrow a decent chunk of money, but it didn't cripple me. And, I got a lot of financial aid from the school and from the federal government. That's not the same situation anymore, right? It's not as good. You really have to borrow a lot more money if you're going to, go to a 4-year college and your parents can't afford to pay for it. And there's some people where, you're growing up in a place where the schools are terrible or crumbling or they don't have enough teachers or, other circumstances, health, circumstances, disabilities, whatever, that create challenges that are going to make it more difficult for you or in some cases may limit your options. So that's true. But you still have an enormous amount of agency and control in creating your life. And so how do you figure that out? I think the first step is figuring out who you are and who you're trying to become. And the basic step for that is figuring out what your core values are. If you know what your core values are, so much in life becomes easier, right? And making decisions, handling crises, relationships, you name it. So you got to figure out what those core values are and make them good ones that you're going to be proud of, that are going to lead you toward being a really good version of yourself. And then really trying to be very self-aware about what you like and what you don't like, what you're good at, what you're not good at, who you like being around and who you don't like being around. Because, you may discover that you've got a passion for something and that may become a career path or a hobby. You may find your purpose. I did early on. I realized that my purpose was to make a difference in the lives of other people. And so public service was a part of that, and being an activist was a part of that. Being a teacher was a part of that. Now being a life coach and meditation teacher is a part of that. And it's been wonderful. I mean, I've had this strong sense of purpose my entire life. I feel really blessed. You may also discover that, or at least for periods of time, may discover your purpose, your sense of purpose. It may feel like that. But at a minimum, even if you don't discover a passion or a purpose for your professional life or volunteering or hobbies or whatever, you certainly can have that sense of purpose in your relationships. And again, that's probably going to give you the biggest impact on your own happiness, right? So don't be worried that you haven't figured out your purpose or passion professionally. People, should be at the core of your purpose. And then in terms of work, if you don't have that sense of a passion or purpose, again, what do you like to do? What do you not like to do? What are you good at? What are you not so good at? Can you get better at the thing you're not so good at? Do you want to get better at the thing you're not so good at? What are the kinds of people that you like to be around? For a lot of people, the number one thing that determines their job satisfaction is the people they work with and for. So be mindful of that, right? Try to find work and job opportunities, companies, organizations that will allow you to be around people that that you like being with, right? That make you feel good and validated and appreciated and challenged in appropriate ways, right? So that's important. I also think that we need to teach kids and each other how to network effectively, how to have informational interviews, how to reach out to people and ask them to talk to you for 15, 20 minutes about what they do and what they like about it and what they don't like about it and how they got there, right? So that you have a better sense of what's out there. Whether it's in a specific field because you have an interest in that field, or whether it's, just in general, particularly for kids, we want them talking to as many people as possible. You should be encouraging kids and making it easy for them to talk to family members, friends of your family, parents of their friends, people in town, you name it. Help the PTA or the school organize job fairs so that kids can go around talking to people who do different jobs. It's really important to network as adults. If you feel trapped or stuck in your career or your job, you should be networking all the time, right? And it doesn't have to be a lot of time. It could be, once a week, 15, 20 minutes on a lunch break, that you have a Zoom call or a phone call or coffee or something with somebody who you may be connected to directly or indirectly. LinkedIn is a great way to grow your network, to connect with people that you know, be able to reach out to them and then figure out who they're connected to and reach out to those people and figure out what's out there, right? That's part of it, is just knowing more about what different types of jobs are out there and what do people like about them and what don't they, and how do you get them? And if it's something you want to do, figuring out what's your path to get there, right? So I think that's huge. I think networking is huge. And coming back to the relationship piece, you also meet more people that way. And you never know when a friendship might blossom, right, from a networking meeting. So I think that's really important. And then, finances, your personal finances, it's huge, right? It can be a huge stressor in your life if you're struggling with your money, if you're not saving, if you're in debt. And so, learning how to more effectively manage your money, how to create a budget, live within your budget, build your budget around your savings goals, and make sure that you pay yourself first, that money goes into your savings accounts, your IRAs, 401ks, whatever, right away as soon as you get paid, so you're not tempted to spend it. That's unbelievably important. And money can be anxiety-inducing. It can be stressful. It can be embarrassing, right? A lot of people don't want to talk about money because they're embarrassed to talk about money. We need to be talking about personal finances a lot more openly, particularly with our kids. And if you're someone, whether a teenager or in your 20s or 30s or 50s or 60s or whatever, and you feel a little lost or a lot lost with personal finance, and have been embarrassed to admit it and ask for help, like, it's something I work with clients on, and there's certainly a lot of other people out there who can help as well, and a lot of resources available on the internet and books, and educate yourself, get help, get support, get advice. You need to get a handle on it. It's not as complicated as you think it is. It can be boiled down to pretty simple concepts and simple habits, and it can make a world of a difference in your life and create more opportunities and choices for you. So that's another big one that we need to figure out. And it doesn't make us happy. Money doesn't make us happy, but it can alleviate stress, and it can give us more options at different points in our lives for doing different things and for having different experiences, right? Better shelter for our families, right? All that. So it can't be the goal, but it's important to manage your money well and to build wealth rather than debt, right? That's a basic premise. And then the other thing that, in terms of living a good life, that I think gets lost a lot of the time, and that we don't really, again, I think, do a great job of helping kids like think this through or understand how to do this, but it's about feeding your soul. Like, it's almost like we spend a lot of time on the externalities, the external things, the jobs, the money, all that, but not on our inner lives. Again, it goes back to your relationship with yourself, right? That core primary relationship that you need to take care of. And I think there's some basic components to that, like that you should have a spiritual practice. For some people, that's religion. It's organized religion. And that can be great for a lot of people. For some people, it doesn't do the trick because they just keep going to the same church or religious organization or doing those practices and those traditions that they were raised with. And they do it without it having much of an impact on them. They're kind of going through the motions, right? Because that's the way it always was. That's it. And to some extent, some people like that, right? They like the routine of it, the predictability of it, right? Going to a religious service that you've been going to your whole life can feel almost like meditation, right? I mean, the difference between prayer and meditation is maybe semantics anyways. But doing something that's routine that you don't even have to think about, right? That the prayers, and that can just lead you into an almost meditative state, right? So some people like that. They find it comforting and helpful. But for a lot of people, they need more, right? Or different. And I think the main thing there is just being curious, right? Having an opportunity to explore your beliefs and explore why we're here, and what's the purpose of life, and how do you have more love in your life, and how do you be more loving? How do you be loving energy? Right? I think that's the main reason why we're here, is to be love, not to be loved or to love other people, but to be love, to be loving energy. And how are we connected to each other and the universe and nature? Like these are things worth exploring and having fun exploring, being curious, spending more time in nature. I think that's an important part of a spiritual practice. It makes us feel more connected to the world around us and other living things. And I think it helps us put our own crap in perspective sometimes. I think learning is a part of feeding our souls, right? That can look different for everybody. It could be, taking classes or reading books or listening to podcasts or watching documentaries or taking an adult ed class on engine repair. One of my cousins is doing that right now. Like, it's awesome, right? He's really enjoying it. It's feeding his soul in a way. So I think learning is a part of that. I think if we're not learning and growing, we're rotting. I think it's one or the other. We don't stay the same, right? We're either growing and learning or we're rotting. So probably better to learn and grow. And then I think music, the arts, right? I think that can stir our soul and feed our soul, right? Not all of it. Some of it's garbage, but there's a lot of music, TV, movies, fine arts, museums, dance, right? You name it, that can really feed our soul, right? Make us feel more connected to other people, give us a sense of awe and wonderment. I think that's pretty amazing. So I think that's another part of living a good life. I hope this was helpful. It's sort of a frame in a way for thinking about the rest of the podcast, because, we will talk about in more depth most, if not all, of the things that I've mentioned today and just kind of skim the surface with. And starting with the next episode, I'm going to start weaving in some episodes where I interview people that I know. Some of them are going to be people, probably a lot of them that you don't know, you've never heard of, just regular people, different walks of life and different experiences. And some you may have heard of. But my main goal is to help them tell their story. Because I think in listening to other people's stories, we maybe understand ourselves a little bit better too, and we certainly develop our empathy for other people. And I think also listening to these stories, we're going to realize even more that you don't have to have all the answers, that everybody's figuring it out as they go. And that's okay. In fact, it can be great. It can be a little nerve-wracking at times and difficult and challenging, but it's also great, right? And so I hope for everybody, not just people in their teens and 20s and 30s just starting out, but no matter where you're at in life, I think you'll enjoy hearing these stories, and some of them will be quite relatable, and others may not be, but I think they'll be interesting because of that. And the first person for the next episode is Jamie Arkin, who was a student of mine, 20-something years ago, and has been working for a long time in Africa and living in Africa, working in the development world. And her story is I think fascinating. She's an interesting person, really engaging. I think you'll enjoy listening to her and hearing about her path and her story. So that's the next episode, so keep an eye out for that. Again, thank you for tuning in, and I hope this was helpful. Please leave a comment wherever you found this podcast, and certainly rate and review. And make sure you subscribe if you haven't already. Follow me also on social media at Integrity and Joy. And please share this podcast with somebody you know. And I look forward to being with you next time. Thank you.